And hello and welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and again, as always, thank you so much for being here today. I truly hope that you enjoy the show. Well, this is a first for me. I hope that you enjoy it. We have a wonderful husband and wife team here, Zeller Squires, and they're going to be performing at the Legacy Theater in Brantford, and I'm thrilled to have them here today to talk about their life, their background, as well as what's coming up for their performance. And Kimberly and Allan, thank you so much for being here today. A pleasure to have you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Well, of course, the introduction is really important to the viewer, as I know your audience members are important to the both of you. Why don't we take them back? Tell us about yourself. Kimberly, why don't we start with you?
My name is Kimberly Squires, and I am an actress. Started when I was a young child. My grandfather actually worked for a local ABC affiliate in California. It was KOVR Channel 13 in Stockton, and as a child he used to cast me in a lot of the commercials that they would do. So that's where I got the bug, and I started as a kid, and later on when my parents divorced, my mother went back east and I went with her to her family, and I grew up in West Haven, Connecticut, and we had a theater group at my high school, and I continued on. Change of gears though, because I went from television platform to theatrical, and then went on to the University of Connecticut to pursue a degree in theater. And that's my nutshell right there. Your turn.
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and I lived there and through until the end of my freshman year in high school. At the end of my freshman year in high school, there was a fellow in the class with me, and it was a geography class, and he was kind of a clown type of a person, and I thought he was funny, and I liked him, and he was kind of an oddball, and I was kind of an oddball. I wasn't really probably the most popular guy in the world. And he talked me into doing a high school play called Tom Jones. And so I went in and I auditioned and I got in, and I played, there was the old quack doctor in the play. And we would come on weekends and build the sets and hang out with everybody, and I just loved everybody involved. They were just kind of different people, and they accepted me and they liked me. And it was a comic part, and I got my first few laughs in the world, and I was like, oh, this is it. And then my parents uprooted us and took us to the middle of California, where this is a long time ago, 40 years ago, into Fresno, California, which is really where all the fruits and nuts are grown in the world, and it was cowboy country. It was a big surprise for me, and I was a little grumpy as a kid because I was, just getting into high school. But soon I moved back into the theater department and found some new friends, and I did a lot of plays there, and didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. I was going to go into Air Force. My father was in the Air Force, and I said, oh, I'm just going to get in trouble there. I know that's going to happen. So I at the last second, went to Fresno State University and was there for a few years and got my degree in theater arts. That means I built the sets and acted and directed. We did everything. And at the end of that, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I could have gone down back to LA and said, I'll be a film TV actor, but I really didn't think that was me. I said, I'm kind of a stage actor type of guy. So I ended up going to grad school. They accepted me at the University of California at Davis, and a Master of Fine Arts in Acting program. And I did that for a couple years, and I did a lot of plays there, some of the best plays of my life, because at the university you still can do the great classics, and it's fully funded, and it's a big stage and all that kind of thing. And so I got out of that, and at the end I said, well, I guess it's time. No running away from it anymore. So I went and started professionally acting, and I actually got hired pretty much right away by a local theater in Sacramento, and been acting kind of ever since. And I actually ended up moving to the Bay Area, San Francisco area of California. And ultimately, after doing a few shows there, that's where I met Kimberly, and we did our first play together there at the City Arts Concord. And I can't say initially it was a match made in heaven. but it ended up being so. It really did.
For the individual that's watching us now that is thinking about pursuing an acting career or is pursuing an acting career, you're both speaking of education before going on to performing. Do you recommend going to school to get those classes and workshops under your belt?
Training is so important. It really, really is. And pardon me. What it allows you to do too is to collaborate with others. It's an exchange. It's an exchange of ideas and information. And I'm thrilled that I went on to. I was hesitant, in the beginning, because when I left California and my mother took me back to Connecticut, I was really resentful because I thought I was going to go into television work right from there. I used to, as a kid, I had a schedule of the commercials that were on for me each morning before my mother took me to school. And so when I would get to school, the kids would say to me, "I just saw you on my television set." And I said, "Well, that's just magic." It's So that had drawn me in, and that I won't forget too that it came after one of the commercials followed my hero in the business. It was after the I Love Lucy show, and Lucille Ball is definitely someone to whom I aspire. And so it was crushing to me that I was going to have to leave that medium behind and switch gears and do this other thing. And but then when I was there in high school, it was delightful and so much fun. And I worked with a fantastic teacher and mentor, Anthony Amato. And from there, when I went on to the University of Connecticut and got the degree in acting, I went back to my high school mentor and I said to him, "You know what I want to do? I think I'd like to have a dinner theater." And he looked at me and said, "Well, how much money do you have, Kimberly? Because I don't know how that's going to work." And together with a lot of other persons close to us within the high school, including Tony Amato's wife, we founded Amaranti's Dinner Theater and had a wonderful 15 years there, I think it was. And so in the meantime, though, I would go out and go back to California because my father was there. So then I would do theater out in California as well. And then one year I was fortunate enough to land a show at Long Wharf Theater. It was the original cast that I was cast in. The show was Dearly Departed. That show play has since been purchased and turned into a movie called Thy Kingdom Come, starring Whoopi Goldberg. And at the time, I learned that the director on the West Coast was going to launch the play. So I called him up and I said, "Do you happen to have the play in front of you?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And I said, "Well, will you open to the title page?" And he did. And I said, "That's my name in the title page." And I was so proud because I had never been published in a play before. And so I said, "I'd like to audition for you." And so he said, "Sure, I'd love to see you. Why don't you come out?" And I knew I was going out to visit my dad because I would go there for summers at a time. So I went there and I auditioned. Never met Allan during that audition, and Allan was already employed at the theater. So I left, I came back, and he called me about 2 months later and he says, "Well, I got good news and I got bad news." And I said, "Okay, so what's the bad news?" He said, "I didn't hire you for the part you previously played at Long Wharf. I hired you for the comedic lead." And I said, "Well, wait a minute." And that was the good news. And I said, "Well, wait a minute. She has a husband in the show." He said, "I know. Don't worry. I cast this guy named Allan Zeller. Don't worry about it. You'll love each other." And I flew back to California and we had our first table read, and Allan's right. It was oil and water and things weren't going well. And I was like, "Oh God, what did I get into?" And he was thinking, "She just thinks she's a know-it-all with a book in her hand from the original play." And I'm just thinking my own little thoughts too. And then as the play went on and we rehearsed, I have a funny story to confess, is that we did have a kissing scene in the play. And for rehearsal purposes, at one time when things were changing and we were finally being a little more cordial and civil to one another, I suggested to him, I said, for the sake of authenticity, Al, maybe we should, because the kiss was actually performed on stage in a vehicle. So it was in a car, and with the steering wheel and the seating arrangement and everything else. So I said to him, this is just a thought, but maybe you might want to consider, we should probably rehearse it in an actual vehicle. So, my car's parked right out in the back here, and we could, give it some authenticity. And from that moment on, he knew that, it was me, that he claims that I spun him into my web.
I called her the Black Widow, yes.
Allan, what brought the two of you together is your story right now. Is this what brought you together to be able to perform together, or did you go your separate ways? How did you create Zeller Squires?
Well, as I said, we were both in the Bay Area, and I had done a previous show with that theater company. Then we did Dearly Departed together, and then she was cast in another show coming up, and they had hired me to run their children's department. So I was fully employed for a year there, and I also ran the lights and sound for her show and that. She needed to go back to Connecticut. Time was out after that, and I needed to finish out my job. They wanted to hire me to run the whole program forever and ever. But this is not that long after grad school, and my ideas at that time were I wanted to act. It wasn't just to go and be a teacher right away, which is fine. It just I didn't want to do that. But I longed for her. I'll say that, and I said, I've never been to the East Coast, so would it bother you if I come out? And she said yes, it would bother her. No, she said it would be wonderful. So I put all my worldly belongings, which really was a box of books and plays, and a little bit of clothes, and I put it in my car that could barely stay on the highway as it was. And I traveled across the United States, and I did it in just barely over 2 days. I didn't stop the car for fear that it would not start again. And I came out, and I got out here, and I didn't really have a penny to my name. And then we just really started trying to do work. And she was getting me into more commercial work, industrials and local commercials, and I was doing that for quite a while. And we got involved in a lot of other things. But as we mature in this business, sometimes the parts become less and less. And so we got to a point where we wanted to work together, and we said, well, how do we, nobody's beating down our door to get it. So we should do this ourselves. Let's create a vehicle for ourselves to keep working. And we know a lot of playwrights because we've done a lot of work with new works over the years. So let's create something. And really what we wanted to do was kind of a throwback to the old television days where the George Burns and Gracie Allen, that kind of a repertoire would happen between us, because we do work excellently. We do know each other's moves. We do both have, I would say, great timing, comic timing. Probably the only one thing we're not the greatest at, we're not really writers. We're not playwrights. But we did have playwright friends. So we've done a lot of work. Some of it was written for us over the years, that with us in mind, because we've done a lot of work together. So we took some of that. And some of the other ones we kind of culled it down out of their works, because they have anthologies out there. And then we said, well, this will work for this and that will work for this. Well, we're not really the right age for that. But if we twist a little bit, we'll be fine for that. It'll be fine. It's not the most important thing that we're 35 anymore. And that's kind of how we did it. And we did we were
members of the Theater Artists Workshop too, right?
Long-time members, 25 years of Theater Artists Workshop. I was the president at one point for a long time. And that's originally where we did the show, the very first version of it, for a fundraiser for the Artists Workshop. And then after that, so we wanted to take it outside of the Theater Artists Workshop, and we wanted to put it into a new public. So we found a place in New Haven, and the original one had like 9 plays in it. It was 2 hours long. It was quite a long. And what we find about doing these is that it's a learning process. That you learn, you go, okay, that's too much. We need to cut a few things out. We need to squish it down. Maybe we'll just do 6 pieces and not 2 acts. It's just 1 act. Let's get rid of some of the stage things that we don't really need that anymore. And so it was a process. And of course, I was producing and building and making the props and costuming. And that was what I learned in that one. That's too much. You can't. Ultimately, we were hitting the stage, and I'm worrying about the audience tickets, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I can't focus on the acting anymore.
He was wearing a lot of hats. But what was great about developing it at the workshop in Norwalk, Connecticut, with our fellow thespians, we actually had them, they were our playwrights. And so it was fun because it benefited everyone. People got to write, they got to create, we got to perform, and we got feedback, and we also did open the doors to the general public. We did have a fundraiser, as Allan indicated, and then people started talking about it, and you should keep going. And what was neat about what we discovered along the way was that the neat thing about this piece is that it can morph and change according to whatever needs there may be to bring the piece to the next venue. Whether it's someone will call us perhaps and say, if they did, we're looking for a Christmas show. Well, then we go in and we just make sure that the Zeller Squires show is comprised more of holiday pieces, perhaps. Maybe we need something educational for children in the school system. We could go and we could create something there that will work in that vein and in that lane. And as Allan indicated in the beginning, it was a larger piece, and it was over 2 hours long with an intermission. And when we did the show in New Haven, we worked with 9 different playwrights at the time, and it was a little crazy in a sense that stylistically they were all different, but that was also the challenge, because that was so much fun, because we you'd be going into one thing and then a next, and we had a ball doing it. And for this particular show, going into the legacy post-pandemic, because theaters had suffered now, obviously, on a national level too, what a lot of theaters were doing was bringing things back now too on a shorter note for the audiences. And some theaters have decided too, maybe for a particular show, we might not do an intermission. Well, coupled with that and the fact that Allan mentioned that we were always interested in stripping the show down and taking it to another level, like Stella and Mirror and who did you just mention?
Comedy duos of the
Burns
past.
and Allan and all of the above, right. So that concept worked, and for our current needs, where when we now play at the Legacy, the show will only run approximately an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay, let me interrupt you for just a second. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back and talk just about what we're talking about right now. Be right back.
Information is power, especially in times of uncertainty.
In the age of 24/7 breaking news headlines, viral tweets, and social media rumors, we all need to take extra steps to verify information before accepting and sharing what we read online.
Whether inaccurate information is purposely posted to deceive or defraud individuals or shared unknowingly by people who believe it's true, misinformation can be dangerous.
Is there a vaccine?
Are certain blood types immune?
Are additional stimulus checks coming?
When will we open back up?
Questions are expected,
and they deserve accurate answers.
We need you to rely on information from official sources and credible subject matter experts.
For both Connecticut-specific information and federal resources, visit ct.gov/coronavirus.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and I certainly hope you're enjoying the show. Well, we continue on with Zeller Squires, a wonderful husband and wife team that's going to be performing at the Legacy Theater. And let's put up their website so that you get to see where the Legacy Theater website is, legacytheater.org, in Branford, Connecticut. And why don't we talk a little bit about the show that you're going to be doing there? What has taken you to the Legacy Theater to do? Is it one act, you're saying?
Yes. So it is an evening of six one-act plays written by 2 different authors, 2 different playwrights, Susan Cinnamon and Frederick Strappel. Mm-hmm. And we're delighted to have them. Susan's credits include writing for ABC's The Goldbergs, Fred's credits, former head writer at Nickelodeon. So we're very blessed. And So going into Legacy this time around, it'll be a shorter version of the show. It will be the 6 pieces. It'll run approximately an hour and 15 minutes without intermission. And it's a great opportunity for us to try out this new version too, with a shorter, more simplistic version too, not so prop heavy on the stage or set heavy either. So it's more about the challenge too of the acting, kind of going, because Allan came up with this concept too on this particular piece, that he said, rather than try to run off stage and do the costume changes backstage as we normally would, he said, let's just incorporate it right into the piece. So now you're going to watch us take it off the hat rack, that sort of thing, and become this next character right in front of your eyes. So that, and hopefully it works.
It was it was a bit about compacting the show. It is 95% comedy, and some of it's very broad. Some of it almost is reaching back to vaudeville, or at least the 50s and the style of comedy. There is some drama in it, but I would say very little drama in it. Some of the subjects, a couple of the plays might make you think a little bit. Some of them, you're not going to think about anything except having a good time. But I will say this, if you have ever been married for any length of time, you are going to connect with these characters very, very much. And I think that's one of the really excellent things, particularly Frederick Stropoli, so good at tapping in to that. I mean, it's so identifiable, these people. And of course that makes, because we've been together quite a long time, more than 25 years. Our anniversary is coming up 25 years, but we've been together a lot longer than that. But every little thing is absolutely true and absolutely a joy. I will say, it is for adults. It is an adult show. Not to worry about that. It is, a couple of the pieces might have a tad of language in it, so it's not for young children, but it's nothing scandalous that we do in the show. And
even if, not necessarily being married to one another, for in the end, because of the way these pieces are done, not every piece is a married couple in the piece. So anyone who's been in any sort of a relationship, whether it's a relationship that you're the tenant and there's your landlord, and there's a relationship that you've been in and involved in so many years, there's something in this for everyone. So it's really about human relationships, how things can fall apart and how things can live happily ever after at the same time.
What happens after you do your wonderful performance at the Legacy? We're in 2022 right now. Do you have plans for the fall of 2022, 23, 24? What are your thoughts about your calendar?
Well, our calendar is, we want to fill it up, is what we want to do. We're always hoping that somebody is going to see it and say, gosh, we would love to produce this and push. I mean, that's the great hope always, probably with any production that anybody does. But moving towards the city, Manhattan, New York, which we thought about, that was where it was going to go from New Haven in the first place. But other things got in the way, pandemic. This opportunity came to us, so of course we couldn't bypass, we had to do it. Well, we always looking for the new audience, a bigger audience, and hopefully things are just going to keep growing and growing and growing.
And Allan always tells me, if all else fails, we're going to rent a van or an RV, and we're going to pop open the side of that thing, and we're going to show up in every town, and we're going to do our little show out the window.
There you go.
You never know. That's where,
Tells me that's your future.
That's where we came from, right? Especially in America, they traveled city to city, and they put on a show in the town, and they went to, that's where it happened. You never know. That's where we might end up going backwards at some point to that point, and that's okay. And that's really okay, and I'm okay with that.
We just love entertaining people and making people laugh, and everyone can use a good laugh, especially these days. We all need laughter and connection and love and camaraderie.
And the live theater, live anything, in my opinion, cannot be beat. It just is the best. There's a connection between people and audience and around you and the performers that just can't be beat. And a lot of us got stuck inside with televisions, and I know the televisions are bigger and better. Well, I like television and I like film too, and we both do work in that. But there's just nothing like being with people.
And you're right about that, because it impacts your show every night too, based on what that audience is doing, thinking, feeling, and how things are going in that moment in time. That's going to impact your performance, whether it's how you walk across the stage, or how you hold for a laugh, or maybe you feed off of them, is what I'm trying to say. And that's what's so exciting and thrilling, that lines that you've rehearsed over and over again could actually change in that theater that particular evening because of the electricity in the air.
Well, we are starting to run out of time. Any closing thoughts for the viewers?
Well, Legacy Theater is having us. They have a very full season, not just us, but so many things. Performers from Broadway are singing there. They have groups. Of course, they have a whole season of plays, and they have groups from military veterans that are doing particular shows. They really have a very wide. So people should be going out and seeing live theater, and being in Brantford. It's not that far away from a lot of us, and it just get out of your house and go do something.
One of the founders of the theater, Stephanie Stiefel-Williams, a dear friend of mine, she is actually performing in one of the shows coming up in April. She's going to be in I Do, I Do. So I would just say too, for the viewers, anyone that is interested in the arts and wants to pursue a career in the performing world, is follow your dreams. That's just, if it's your passion, don't let it go. And the neat thing is about this industry, your career is not over when you turn a certain age. You can continue on. As Allan said earlier, you mature into other roles. I always tell people that I was going to be the little lady that said, "Where's the beef?" And that of course dated me right there. That's how old I am. So
Okay, well, I want to thank you both so much for being here, and we wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
In your upcoming performance, as well as in the future.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
I'm Deborah Gilbert. You have been tuned into Arts and Entertainment. I hope you enjoyed the show. Have a super day today. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.